All right, guys, we're going to dive into it, and this is going to be an interesting video because a lot of you are going to unsubscribe me after this. Just kidding. Please like, share, and subscribe because it helps me out. I'm going to try to be as honest as I can. This is based on my experience. Other people have different experiences. Everybody's got their own opinions. There's a lot of context to fit into this very short video, so please bear with me. Here we go. We're going to talk about self-destructive behavior and diesels and what is I'm seeing kill a lot of diesels and affect a lot of young diesel owners. So a little bit of context to this. Anytime you have a diesel, anything you do to it is going to alter certain things. There's always going to be pros and cons. Some of those things have a lot of pros and very minimal cons. We'll talk about something like, I don't know, a regulated return system on a 7.3 or a 4-line feed system on a 7.3. At the end of the day, really the only cons of that is typically your pocketbook. You're just going to cost some money to do, has a lot of benefits, no real negatives. We could say adding like a faster air doll to a VP44 Cummins or to any CP3 truck that doesn't have a lift pump at all. It's proven, guys. You're going to take a hit to the pocketbook. You might add a little bit more complexity to that system, but overall, you're talking about a lot of reliability. Those kind of modifications and upgrades are kind of far and few between in the industry. What do I mean? Because we always talk about upgrades. Everything's an upgrade, right? You know, that's good marketing. And these guys that come out here and they do sales, they're great. They're going to tell you that this tuner, we'll say we're going to use a Hydra, for example, because that's just the rage for 7.3s, and it has a lot of benefits. I'm not knocking the Hydra itself, but if you talk to somebody that sells Hydras, they're going to tell you that it's going to make your truck run better, it's going to run smoother, you're going to have more torque, it's going to pull better, women will throw themselves at you. Most of those things are true, but they don't tell you about the negatives to that. They don't tell you about the cons to tuning. And this applies not just to electronically injected diesels, but also to mechanical injected diesels. Everything from your DB2 pumps to your VP44s, sorry, not VP44s, take that back, P7100s, VE44s, so on and so forth. I'm not anti-performance. I love diesel performance. I live and breathe it. I am a diesel enthusiast through and through. But the problem is you have a lot of people, especially now thanks to Facebook, they go on, they ask a question, they get a response, oh, you want more power, you need this recipe. And that's it. It's not a one-size-fits-all. Everybody uses their trucks in different ways. I use my truck as a daily driver. I use my truck to pull. I want reliability over everything else. I could care less if it makes 250 horsepower if it gets the job done versus 450. Sometimes will I like 450? Yeah. Sometimes I don't want the complexity and price point that comes with that 450. So I keep it simple and I keep it reliable. That's going to be totally different from somebody that uses their truck as basically a play toy. There's so much more context that goes into these things, and it's not a one recipe fits everybody scenario. And I see that over and over again. If you call most of these tuners or aftermarket suppliers, they're going to hardly ask you any questions. Sometimes they do. Some of them are pretty good. But a lot of times they're going to be like, oh, yeah, you got this truck. This is the recipe. Boom. That's it. Send us your credit card information. The other thing to think of is when we do talk about tuning, once again, this applies to both mechanical and electronically injected diesels. It doesn't matter if it's common rail. It doesn't matter if it's HEUI injection. We only have really several ways, small ways, to increase power on a diesel. Usually it has to do with injection timing. It has to do with the amount of fuel that's being injected and the duration of the fuel that's being injected. And we have a very small window to do that. Anytime we change those parameters, we are doing several things. But the big ones are we're increasing cylinder pressures. Yes, we are. And we are increasing heat. And we're not talking just about heat through the entire engine. We're not just talking about EGTs. We're increasing heat inside the motor. We're talking on bearings. We're talking about especially piston heads. All that good stuff. Valve temperatures. All that kind of goes into this one big formula. You're not getting away from it. Anytime you do tuning, anytime you do anything involving your injection and vents, to make more power, you are increasing more stress on the internals of the engine. Diesels are usually built pretty tough, so generally they handle it pretty well. And honestly, if you're only picking up 30, 40, or 50 horsepower on a tune and you've done everything else, you've got more free-flowing intake, you've got less restrictive exhaust, you have improved your intercooler, you've improved your oil cooling capacity, any of those kind of things, depending on the application, yeah, that's going to help. That's going to help mitigate those increases that you're seeing. But they're still there. You're still increasing stress on the internals of the engine. Once again, we go back to, well, diesels are built very tough. But let me ask you this. I have seen a 6.5 Detroit with 330,000 miles on it. Truck suffered a water pump failure, cracked a cylinder head due to temperature. Owner wanted to replace both cylinder heads because they were about, I think, $850, $900 a set at the time. Slapped the new heads on there. Truck fired up, 389,000 miles. It got sold. Truck was still running great. I've seen LB7 Duramax with 489,000 miles on it. 7.3 Power Stroke, bone stock, 351,000 miles. And some way, way past that. But I've also seen a 6.5 completely shot at 50,000 miles. Why? Because it got the heck beat out of it and it was modified like crazy. Just saying. A lot of the issues I see with guys bringing trucks in now, they start modifying them and they don't know what they're getting into. They don't know what a 450 horsepower 7.3 is going to be like. And guess what? It's not going to drive like stock. You're not getting stock drivability out of a truck that has stage 2 injectors and a bigger turbo. And sometimes they hate it. Like, hey, I did all this and I hate it. Why? Well, it's because it's not as responsive. It's smoky. You have to monitor everything. You have to know to monitor everything. They don't get it. A lot of the issues I've seen with some of these Cummins lately, it's because people think they want more power, or they have a small issue and they get online, they ask on Facebook, and somebody tells them they need injectors, and they put injectors in the stupid thing. Well, since I'm upgrading injectors, I'm going to go to stage 1.5s on a 7.3. Well, that comes with a whole slew of issues, because once you have those aftermarket injectors, you can't just put a stock tune back in the truck. So if you have an issue not only with your fuel system or your injectors, or is the issue with your tuning? It gets a lot harder to track down and figure out what's going on. I'm not saying that if you want to do that stuff, or if you have a weekend warrior, or you've got another vehicle and you really don't care if this thing's broken down, go for it. But honestly, I've seen guys put injectors in Super Duties, 7.3s, and their goal is like 300 horsepower. You can make that on stock injectors. But because they were upgrading anyway, they put a set of 1.5s or 2s in it for whatever reason. Same thing with turbos. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've ran into people that have put a HX40 or something on a 12 valve, and they still have a stop pump, but haven't taken the time to realize that I don't care how much fuel you throw at it, that HX40 is going to be a lot more laggy than an HX35. And yeah, there's some things you can do and there's some things you can get around of there, but I'm telling you guys, just keep it simple. Understand that if you're going to do these things, you're going to affect the life of your diesel. There's a reason that these old timers used to get 350, 400, 500,000 miles out of their trucks. They kept them pretty much stock. They knew how to drive. They monitored things. And when they started going wrong, they said, hey, something's going wrong. I need to fix it, before they realized that they had a fuel filter that they've had in the truck for 100,000 miles. Or because they had a fuel leak that went undetected for, 20,000 miles. They noticed when they started losing power because their fuel economy that they tracked in their little book in the dash told them, I was getting 16 miles a gallon, now I'm getting 14. something's not right. Let me start looking into it. As new vehicle owners, we typically don't do that. If that dash light doesn't come on, a lot of times we don't care. Hell, some of y'all are driving around with the dash light on like it's a chariot or something. It's a badge of honor. Think you've earned a Purple Heart or something. Guys, that's the problem. Right there. We have to start being better. If you want these trucks to last, keep tuning simple. Try to keep the truck relatively stock besides fortification mods, and there's, depending on the manufacturer, there's a lot of them. I'm not saying that you can't increase the power a little bit. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying, hey, if the truck came with was making 200 horsepower at the wheels, and now it's making 325 horsepower at the wheels, things are going to start going wrong, especially if you're still running a stock turbo or a stock transmission, because you're putting a lot of stress on those. Things like dry pressure. When you increase fueling, you naturally increase dry pressure. Yes, the wastegate may mitigate some of that, but at some point in time, it's going to be an issue. You're spinning that turbo faster to make more boost, so you're putting more stress on the bearings. It's that simple. Once again, there's a threshold there. There's that Goldilocks area where you can make a couple more pounds of boost and the turbo's probably still happy. But what happens when you start getting past that? And even at 1 or 2 pounds, it's still spooling faster. If you're commanding it to go faster, especially on a VGT turbo, and you're trying to get it to make more boost, you're spinning it faster. Increasing wear, increasing pressures, increasing heat. It's not rocket science, guys. Once again, I hope you guys have found this helpful. I hope you don't totally hate me now for saying it, but I've had 4 customers recently come in just with really, I don't want to say stupid, but silly stuff. Expensive repairs, several $1,000s in repairs, each of them. They were all self-inflicted because they didn't know what they were getting into. They started modifying something or bought something that was heavily modified without realizing the implications. And to get it back to where it was usable, reliable, and drivable, and usable in the way that they want it to be usable, some of those tickets were up there $7,000, $8,000. Put that in perspective before you go out and start messing around with stuff that you may not fully understand. And do not believe the idiots on Facebook. I cannot tell you how much bad advice I see. And I'm on the forums. I'm on the groups. I have been for 20 years. Facebook is a great source, but I guarantee you about 90% of what I see is total BS. People that don't know. I've seen so much bad advice. And sometimes I'll try to call it out. I'll try to talk to somebody. Maybe, hey, you know, what you're telling this guy is not exactly true. I can back it up with facts. I can back it up with science. And then that individual will sit there and tell me that I'm wrong based on their very limited experience because they've owned one vehicle. Well, that's fine. I'm glad you've owned one of these. I've worked on dozens. I've owned probably a handful. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7, personally. Put thousands of miles on some of them, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of miles of driving. But yes, this truck you've owned for a year, this one just happens to be the exception, right? Yeah. And then when you back it up even more with studies, facts, science, chemistry, the realities of the world, you know, their truck and their perception just happens to break all logic. That's the kind of advice you're getting on Facebook. Keep that in mind. Do not take what's on there as gospel. A better resource, go back to the forums. If you go back to the forums, you usually get enthusiasts, and there's a wealth of knowledge. Now, there's still some individuals on there that are going to give you some bad advice. But I will say it's probably about 100 times better than what you're going to find on Facebook or TikTok. And I hate to say it even better than YouTube, because some of the YouTube videos are pretty bad too. Anyway, guys, I don't do this out of hate for anybody. I believe that you should modify your truck in whatever way makes you happy. End of story. All I'm trying to do is take a little bit of time, pass on my experience, and save you some time and money. I have no horse in this game and nothing to gain from it. This is just my humble opinion, and I hope you'll keep it in mind. So anyway, remember, if you like this video, like, share, and subscribe. Please be safe. Take care of your friends. Take care of your neighbors. Take care of your family. Thank you for watching. As always, guys, all the way.